hit. And here comes Matos, and this game is over.
Well, all we can say is that this was a very disappointing series. Not only did the Mariners, they've blown it twice on absolute heartbreakers by 1 run, and now they're swept. They're going to be 3-7 going up against Houston. And this game was a lot of lost opportunities. Like, they allowed so many runners on base. Like, we can already see that this team has massive issues, even without the injuries, especially before Victor Robles, because we saw so many opportunities where they could have scored these runs and prevent themselves in this situation. And the bullpen's not that much better either.
No. Although I will give some flowers to Eduardo Pizarro, who had a nice outing today. But I will say that Mariners up 2-0, and you have one of your better starters on the hill in Brian Wu, and he leaves a fastball up out over the plate, and Yastrzemski just takes it the other way. And as soon as that ball goes out, you kind of had the feeling that this thing was over, that it was going to take a Herculean effort. But then the Mariners actually do get runners in scoring position. They get one on a base hit, and then J.P. Crawford strikes out in the worst possible situation with runners in scoring position and one out in a situation where you're just hoping for contact. Even a dribbler anywhere in the infield, you might be able to lay it out and score the tying run, but you're absolutely right. This was just a game of missed opportunities, and it's disappointing, man, because now you're coming into a portion of the schedule where it's not going to be forgiving, and there's a very good chance that this thing gets away from the Mariners quick.
Yeah, it really does. Like, we're looking at schedule. Not only are the Mariners going to be hosting the Houston Astros, and you're at home, so that's where the Mariners' offense is even worse, because I'm not going to say it, and I don't want to say it. Then you got the Texas Rangers, who are actually off to a better start than the Mariners. Then you're at Cincinnati, at Toronto, and at Boston, and you're not going to be home until April 25th against Miami and Los Angeles. So with that stretch, just to think that going 500 in that stretch would be considered an absolute wild success, because with the lack of personnel the Mariners have, their infield's atrocious. Ryan Bliss couldn't even complete a double play. And then third base is pretty much empty other than Dylan Moore. But do you want him as your everyday player? You don't. J.P. Crawford is proving himself that he may not even be a shortstop any longer for the Mariners. And now you got Victor Robles injured. Now you're short of an outfielder. Unless what are you gonna do? Call up Dom Canzone or call up Tyler Locklear and move Luke Raley to right field? Like, the depth is already thin, and we were crying for it throughout the entire offseason that the Mariners had to add legitimate players to not only, of course, build a good offense, but also to offset all of these injuries that are already happening. We have Jorge Polanco, who's already day-to-day, and now Victor Robles. With the way that injury happened, you would think that that's probably going to be a 60-day IL.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. Yeah, there was no breathing room, and that was the biggest reason why it was so imperative that the Mariners get off to a hot start. I mean, you have the A's for 4, you have the Tigers for 3, and a Giants team that, quite frankly, you're probably better than, and you basically you barely split against the A's. You get dummied by the Tigers, and then you get dummied by the Giants in a game where you lose 10-9, and then 2 games where you have the lead in the series, and it's like today it's just baffling, man. It's just baffling. And now you have the prospect of the Astros for 3, you have the Rangers for 3, and then you travel to Cincinnati and Toronto
and Boston
before you come home against the Marlins. And the question is, is there a series win in any of those?
Let me see. I'm going to say Astros, probably not, but the only forgiving thing is Astros are not exactly off to a good start, but that may not matter. Texas, I'll be happy at this point. 1 out of 3 seems like a success because they're off to a really good start, and they have to deal with Jacob deGrom and Eovaldi. Then Cincinnati, they pretty much never win there at this point. And then Toronto, you never win a series in Toronto. And Boston, they always suck at Boston. So this is looking very bleak. Like, this is looking like a start where hopefully we have fans finally saying, fire Jerry Dipoto, because Jerry Dipoto had all of offseason to take care of these problems and voids, and he had a great free agency to do it, or at least had all those prospects to give away that he haven't even used in major league level yet. You still have Cole Young riding in there in AAA. You still have Harry Ford, who he had not even used. You got Ty Locklear still hanging around. So it's like, what's the point of holding on to these prospects if you're not going to
use them as use them as trade chips to enhance your major league roster, right? Is your payroll so thin that you can't add a guy with prospects? I mean, is that what you're telling me? No. Okay, so what's the deal? This is supposed to be a draft, develop, and trade team, right? So it's, okay, if you don't want to be active in free agency, that's fine. But that being said, there is another way to improve this Major League Baseball team, and that's by unloading some of your prospects that that are not going to have a future at the big leagues, right? There's going to be a handful of guys who are sitting in your top 15 who for a fact are not going to have a future with the Mariners. And right now, you can't convince me that there's going to be teams out there that aren't going to want to deal in prospects. I can name off 5 right off the top of my head that would be happy to have Mariner prospects.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Kevin Kirby says, or call them up. Right. And I said, and that's what I said at the beginning of the season. If you're not going to improve your major league roster, I would rather see Cole Young get run in the infield, Tyler Locklear get run in the infield, because at least you're doing something progressive. You're at least trying to at least improve with some of these young guys that, for the lack of a better term, are coveted. But instead, it's like you're going to try to sell me on Donovan Solano and Dylan Moore, who we've seen now, who is not an everyday player. You're trying to convince us that this outfield of Rosarena, Robles, and Julio Rodriguez is like the second coming of Jesus. And it's like, come on, man. Like, that's the biggest insult is the fact that, as somebody who has watched this team over the course of the last 35, 40 years, you're going to sit here and tell me that your master plan, that this thing, you can run it back, and because this pitching is so good, that it's going to trickle down through the lineup. It's like, dude, you can't insult my intelligence. You literally cannot do it.
And with the starters, as much as they are supposed to be the strength of the team, they're not doing that great at the start of the season either. We saw Logan Gilbert lose a game to the Tigers. Brian Wu gave up home runs. Bryce Miller didn't look that great. Like, I can't even name who's actually the most efficient starter. I was going to say Brian Wu, but after today, it seems like everyone is off their game. And even without the injury, you still have 4 quality starters, and they are still not playing up to that level. Now, can you blame them at this point? Probably not, because they already know what they're pitching up against. They're pitching with the fact that they're not getting run support. They're pitching with the idea that the bullpen's just going to blow it. So it kind of takes a mental toll.
And it's not the craziest thing to say that your starting pitchers are more comfortable and work better in a rhythm with a lead than trying to be perfect. And that's the biggest problem. It's like these guys, and this was the problem with Julio, with Felix Hernandez in his prime, the fact that he might get 1 run per start. So you got to pitch perfect, which means you are going to be stressing out the entire time, knowing that a 2-run home run and you're going to lose this game.
Then that 2010 season, going back to Felix, like, everything that happened in that season gave every bit of reason to give Felix the Cy Young Award winner, because sure, 13-12, blah, 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 but look at his ERA, 2.27. He held the other teams to less runs. But when you looked at his run support, it was diddly squat. And I think he didn't even get 2 runs worth of run support throughout the entire season. And that's what the entire starting rotation is dealing with.
And, here's the thing. It's like, I don't care where the Mariners finished the last couple seasons. I know technically they finished 1 game out, but you can't convince me that those were playoff teams that just fell short. It's like That wasn't the case, right? That, the 2024 team fell apart in July. The 2023 team fell apart in September. It's like, the reality is there is not enough experienced winners in this team to augment some of these guys. That's one of the things that's missing. It's like, who in this lineup right now has won multiple championships that can carry this team? You know what I mean? Like, experience matters. And that's the reality. It's like, yes, it's great to have some of these young players, but that being said, you also have to have leaders on this team as well too. And that's something that's sorely missing from this team, is having legit leaders being able to carry. And that's Randy, maybe Randy, he's been to a World Series. Yeah, but whatever, man. We're talking the 2020 Rays in a shortened season in a bubble World Series, man. Come on now. I just, for me, it's like, what said it all to me is when, they were trying to bring back Carlos Santana this offseason
and Justin Turner,
and couldn't get it done.
Yeah, and they offered more money than the Guardians, but Carlos Santana knew and was concerned. He already knew about the culture of the team. So, and Suarez was the one that kept it all together. And ever since Suarez got traded, there is no real leader on that team.
So, okay, great. I'll give you Randy Arozarena. He's been to the playoffs a lot. Okay, fine. Who else? Maybe Mitch Garver. Okay, that's two. Who else?
And this is response to Kevin Kirby's comments. But going forward in this series, and I want to see who's pitching in the next few days. And I did add
experience matters, man.
And I've added Houston's starter, by the way, for my fantasy baseball team, because I know he's going to get me 5 strikeouts because you're in T-Mobile Park. But you have Logan Gilbert against some bullpen guy. Then you got Luis Castillo against Valdez, and then Mariners have a pitcher to be named later against Brown. So it's not looking. I have no hope for this series. Like, I'm expecting 1 out of 3 at best. I don't expect 2 out of 3. If it's 2 out of 3, then we're gonna have fans saying, "We are so back, baby." And yeah, speaking of Polanco, which Kevin Kirby's mentioning, Polanco is now having injuries, and let's look at our injury reports right now, and it's not looking any promising. George Kirby's still out, no timeable return. Matt Brash, no timeable return. You've got Jorge Polanco on day-to-day, and now you got Victor Robles, who could miss 60 games. He could be on 60-day IL, and we know how 60-day ILs basically work. It basically means you're out for the season. So we can potentially lose Victor Robles. So you lost one of our more athletic outfielders who still could be better, but he was supposed to be one of the spark plugs of the teams, and now the Mariners don't have that. Who is your leadoff hitter going to be? You have no idea. You've got what? Dylan Moore, J.P. Crawford, who's pretty much gone. Do you want to put Julio as a leadoff hitter again, who strikes out too much? Or better yet, call up Cole Young and just let him play leadoff. He plays leadoff.
It's a good question, man.
And Houston
more questions than answers, and we're not even 2 weeks into the season.
Yeah, we had questions before the season even started, and Kevin's saying Houston looks just as bad as they do, but they still have what? Yordan Alvarez, who kills the Mariners, and Jose Altuve. So I don't know. Looking at more comments. Mariners should have paid Pete Alonso, Alex Bregman, Ha-Seong Kim in the offseason. Yeah, they should have. Mariners would have a solid third baseman. Mariners would have a solid first baseman. And the Mariners would have a shortstop that would be right on J.P. Crawford's tail. But nope, the Mariners cannot do that. What should be the move be for Robles? Well, the move that we're predicting is either Dom Canzone or Tyler Locklear gets called up. It's probably going to be Dom Canzone because of outfield depth, and they don't want to move Luke Raley to right field. But I think what they should do is let Ty Locklear play so we don't put so much strain on the infield and just let Luke Raley play right field because he does hustle, which I will give him that. And I would rather have Luke Raley at the outfield than a first baseman anyway.
100% agreed. I'm just going to, and like, here's the thing. It's like, at least by paying Pete Alonso, Alex Bregman, and Ha-Seong Kim, at least you're showing ambition, and that's one of the things that it's been sorely been lacking. But that being said, you know that they're not going to do it because I still believe this to be true, that the $240 million signing of that second baseman,
Robbie Cano.
Robbie Cano, that left them with egg on their face. They're not it went horribly. And I think that because the Mariners were already risk averse to begin with anyway, that just made them even more risk reverse. That's why they hired Jared DePoto, because DePoto does not believe in handing out long contracts to position players. It's the way that he operates. He would rather draft, develop, and trade, but we're not even trading. We're not doing any of that. Can you imagine if this team actually did trade Luis Castillo to the Red Sox, and you got Tristan Casas and Yoshida?
Exactly. And here's the ironic thing about the Cano contract: they still dumped him to the Mets, and the Mets still took up a portion of his contract.
Right, and the Mariners were still paying him not to play for them. But that being said, it's like that was the biggest problem coming into the season was depth. You just didn't know where it was at, and so you were hoping that they would avoid injury. That was the plan. The plan was that maybe they can avoid injury for the first couple months and get off, and stay in that race till they can get to the point to the trading deadline where they can actually start improving the team. But if the worst happened, then you're in a world of hurt, because by the time you get to the deadline, you're going to be a seller.
And to make matters worse too is it's not like Mariners really have any prospects that will stand out. Like, all the best ones are still stuck in A+. Laz Montez, A+, but he could be a strikeout dud. That is still possible. Like, he could either be like a Yordan Alvarez, or he could be Jared Kelnick or Carlos
We're
Peguero.
find out, yeah. We're going to find out if he's a strikeout merchant. But that being said, it's like Cold Emerson, not ready yet.
Felnin Celestine just got to Modesto and hoping that he stays healthy.
Yeah. Johnny Formello is coming back from injury. It's like some of these guys are legit 2, possibly 3 years away. And this is what they're banking on, the 2027, 2028 season, when some of these guys are starting to come up. Like, in the meantime, the guys that are close are Cole Young and Ty Locklear.
Just give them a shot.
And it's like, by the time we hit Memorial Day, we're going to be in that status where you're giving young guys a shot. Like, this has the potential to go bad so quickly. Like, we're on the brink of losing the season, and we're not even 2 weeks into the season.
And a few things. One is, what was I going to say? Lost my train of thought already. Is when, we got to play these prospects. But the other thing too is they want to say, oh, it's just an early start. It's only, we've been saying that for how many freaking years? We said this in 2008. We said this in 2010. We said this in 2015. We said this in 2017. We said this in 23. We said this in 24. Don't tell me about, oh, it's only a couple weeks. How about the fact that the Mariners kept missing the playoffs by 1 game because they lose ridiculous games like this? And
they don't start the season quick. They don't play with a sense of urgency. And it's like they play like they're 6 months in the season, and they don't start showing up until June, July, where the first month of the season is an absolute horror show. And yet they still manage to hang around. But that being said, it's like, it's been a long time since a Mariner team had been out of it by Memorial Day. Like, we're on the cusp of like 2005. We're on the cusp of like, pick any year in the 1980s.
Any of them.
Pick any year.
1986. And let me add to this. And I finally remember my train of thought. Sure, we have all these exciting prospects on the way, but here's the problem. Logan Gilbert, George Kirby still haven't signed extensions. Don't you think that one of them are going to be gone by then? Did you ever think about that, Jerry DePoto?
100%. But also,
and John Stanton?
I'll take it another step further. Let's say Logan Gilbert or Brian Wu, who's got an injury history, or Bryce Miller suffer an injury and they're out for half of the season.
Then who the Mariners have to lean on? No one.
Who? And now all of a sudden your vaunted rotation doesn't look so goddamn vaunted.
Yeah, but we have Gerangelo Shincha, but he's an A+. So he's still years
Logan
away.
Evans? Well, who's it going to be? Logan Evans?
Emerson Hancock again to give up 6 runs in the first inning?
Could be worse.
Yeah. I think Mariner fans have learned the lesson that we can't get any worse
No,
than this because the Mariners find ways.
The goal isn't to be mediocre. The goal is just to be good enough where it draws 3 million fans to the turnstiles. And that's the problem. It's the biggest problem is not the franchise, but the Mariner fan base that accepts this bullshit. That's the problem.
Which is why, yeah.
And I understand it because we haven't won jack shit in nearly 50 years, and Mariner fans are desperate for a winner. And so they'll cling to the narrative that the Mariners are willing to put out and spend their hard-earned money to go watch this crap.
All I can say is the only reason I'm going to a Mariners game on April 25th against Miami, it's for one of my best friends' birthday party, one of my Special Olympics athletes, so I got to spoil him. And I'm actually trying to find a way to get hooked. I'm trying not to spend money because I have no interest in giving my money to this team. I already did through RoofTopSports just so I can do my YouTube shows. But aside from that, I don't really have much of an incentive to go to a Mariners game. And neither do most of the fans that don't even show up. The opening day didn't even draw a sellout. So maybe some Mariner fans are finally waking up to the idea that, yeah, they're not giving us a winning team. So,
well,
yeah, we're not going to give them our money.
But that's the thing is, like, if you're interested in watching competitive baseball, you have the Aqua Sox to the north who are going to be fun and exciting. The Everett Aqua Sox actually have a nice little core of young Mariner prospects that are worth paying to watch. Plus tickets, you can get tickets for under $10, or you can go down to Tacoma and watch them and watch the Rainiers play, which is always a fun ticket to purchase, right? And if you use the promo code
and watch, use my promo code.
And what's even best is you can use the promo code and get $20 off your purchase, and you're essentially watching Aqua Sox or Rainiers games for free.
Yeah, and how about Modesto with what's his name? Felny and Celestine, or hell, fly over to Dominican Republic or Arizona, and you can watch the DSL and ACL for free. If you're willing to handle, if you can handle 110-degree weather, that is. But
yeah, hey, it's just, you know what, the biggest thing was, after 2022 and the excitement of going into 2022 when the Mariners were absolutely aggressive in the offseason to make that team better. And the way that season ended and the momentum and just how excited the city was around this baseball team to completely drop the ball in subsequent seasons. We are so far away from that season, the momentum that we were able to bring to this town. And now it's like, it almost feels like Jerry DiPoto is just like throwing darts at a dartboard. That'll work.
So and it's like, 2022 was basically 95. I think this feels like 1998 or 1999. That's how it feels right now.
No, this somewhat feels like 1988, 1989.
Oh, we're gonna go that far, aren't we?
Yeah. It doesn't feel too good. It's like you watch the team play, and it's like, dude, I don't want to say that these guys aren't trying, because I believe that they are. It's just, it's flawed, man. We don't have any corner infielders. We started the season without a third baseman and a first baseman. You know what I mean? And your answer to that is Dylan Moore and Rowdy Tellez?
At that point, just call up Cole Young and Ty Locklear on your opening day. It's just too bad that none of them had good spring ball, but eventually you have to call them up, because we cannot go into this season going for a whole season of Dylan Moore, a broken Polanco now apparently. The only thing that's carrying him is his bat, but is that even enough anymore? Like, his defense is so bad, I don't even care that he's batting 300. Like, even if he's having a 40 home run season, I still don't care. If his defense sucks, who cares at this point?
And it was flawed, to think that he can play out of position where even his natural position isn't really all that great. But Kevin Kirby asked, what will it take for John Stanton to sell the team? And it's like, well, the cool part is the fact that John Stanton's in his 70s, right? So you would expect him to cash in at some point, right? That's the whole point. It's like you do this and you play the long game for the eventual sell. That's why franchise valuation is important, because when you eventually sell it, you're going to walk away with $3 to $5 billion, right? Depending on who buys it. But that being said, it's like the one thing you have to consider is, like, in your 70s, you're not going to want to do it forever, because you're eventually going to want to ride off into the sunset. So, like, I would probably assume that within 5 to 7 years, Stanton sells the club.
Yeah, that's gonna be a long time, but unfortunately now, though, I am running out of time. I guess the last question I'm gonna answer from Kevin is, how high would we be if we beat the Texas and Houston? I still won't be high at all. I still am gonna.
I might
I'm still
be
gonna.
smiling. I might be smiling because, I mean, a series win is a series win, and we kind of need one right now.
Yeah, we haven't even won a series.
Like, we need a week stretch of good baseball where we're scoring 5 runs a game. You know what I mean? Like, that's what this club needs. It's like, it needs, like, that inner momentum just for the team to say, like, you know what? Yeah, we can do that.